Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith, and our guest tonight is Ryan Fleming. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Our co-host, Dave Anderson, was too busy tonight, tied up, but I know he'll enjoy listening to your story. You have an amazing story. You have a journey in tennis. Let's go back to the beginning. How did you get connected with the game?
My dad taught himself. He was in his late 20s. Good athlete. He ended up being, I didn't realize at the time, but he was self-made, very good. He got up to 5-0 by the time he was in mid-30s. But just watching him play and him taking an interest, I got an interest. It started on the wall. I used to think I'd write a book called Breaking the Wall because I would go out and hit on that wall, 9 years old, for hours every day.
In the mountains of Western North Carolina.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, so that wall, long story short, at the very end of that, after I tried to play on tour for a little while, I'd still come back to that same wall. And I'd started over the years, there's a little crack in the cinder block, in one particular cinder block. So I started aiming for that every day for years. And one day, that cinder block split in half and then started coming out. And finally, a piece of that cinder block came out. So I broke the wall.
That's good. You got to go back and write that book. Played other sports growing up?
Yeah. Played soccer, basketball, football. Played baseball once. It was too slow for me. And then, that's about it.
How did you happen to choose tennis over the other sports?
I think it was more frustrating for me. And I don't know why, but that's what hooked me. It was more challenging. It was harder to improve in. And so I think I liked that challenge. I felt like the other sports came easily, and then I just would kind of lose interest. So I picked the hard one. I don't know if that's a wise approach, but that's the approach I decided upon at about age 10.
You had to do well in juniors to be recruited and play for Chuck Kriese at Clemson. So tell us about this story. How did you get under Chuck's thumb? His radar? How did you become a member of the Clemson tennis team?
His thumb.
His rule.
Yeah. So I was. It's hard to explain, but I was not very responsible with the gifts I was given growing up with education and even with sports. I would get letters from schools that I would have been very happy to go to. I didn't open them. I didn't read them. I didn't know anything about recruiting trips. I don't know why. I never had counseling on that. I'm sure they offered it at my school, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to teachers in general. So I think it was May of the same year I'm supposed to be going into college in the fall. I had no idea. I just wasn't thinking that way. I happened to play a tournament there. It was I think they called it a bullfrog tournament back then. It's one of the 3 or 4 big Southern tournaments. And I got to the finals. And so I'm guessing he watched me from his little window office up there. Ended up losing 7-6 in the third, missing an overhead on a match point that I had. But he came down and asked me where I was going to school. And I said, I don't know. And he said, "You're going here." I said, "Okay." So that was it.
Chuck is a young coach. I mean, he worked for Harry Hopman. He's been a guest on the podcast. We've both been tennis. He's a little older. He looks younger because he had good head hair. But he was with All American Sports a little bit before I was. And that was a company that Nick Bollettieri founded. But Harry Hopman and Nick Bollettieri worked together, if you can believe that. One was in charge of juniors and one was in charge of adults. Nick was in charge of juniors. But from that, he got connected through Mr. Hopman, and the rest is history. He certainly has a long, long history in tennis, but
he's made his mark.
He definitely likes fitness. He definitely likes let's hit the road, let's run a little bit. What was that like?
Very well described with the first thing you do when you come to school for him is morning madness.
Hell Week.
Hell Week, yeah. It's that pretty much describes his training method through and through. His
goal, I remember him saying, my goal is that the players, when they get in the car, they won't be able to sit down.
Yeah.
They have to get in the car and stand up.
Oh, yeah.
But his theory was work them so hard during that first week. If they quit, I don't want them on the team in the end.
Yeah.
So survivors.
Yeah. And he got us in good shape. That's for sure. We knew we could outlast anybody in the nation. That's at least our mindset.
So through college, and then after you started playing pro tennis, I guess you could lead in with a story of coming to see me, an injury, and it was really pretty much based on technique. Would you say?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. I was playing at Hillsborough
Community College. I was based in Tampa for 15 years. It's a beautiful place. It's sandwiched right between where the Bucks play football and the Yankees play their spring baseball. 28 tennis courts. We had a co-op. So we worked with the college. We ran their women's tennis team, but we also ran a junior development program.
Yeah.
When we had coaches come in and people like yourself that were beyond juniors when they started working with us.
And you had all those concrete racquetball courts. Is that what they were? Maybe handball courts? I'm not sure.
In Florida, 3-wall racquetball.
Okay.
Joe Curtis was a coach of Jesuit forever. He just recently retired. And the Jesuit school in Tampa is just a few miles from HCC, Hillsborough Community College. So I took a group of juniors from the Orlando area to play Jesuit high school. And I was just heartbroken because I went and they had knocked those. They had one huge tennis wall, a true tennis wall, really, really high. Yeah, they knocked that down, and they knocked down the 3-wall racquetball. So we had some nice walls to hit on.
Well, so that's what led me to meeting you. So, back to hitting the wall. Wherever I went, I would look for a movie theater or a grocery store, and I'd find a big, cinder block brick wall, and in the back with a lot of, asphalt or parking lot or whatever it is. And everywhere I went, I'd find a wall I could hit on. Well, at that tournament, I had them right there in those racquetball courts. It was perfect. So I was spending a lot of time there. And I think the day I met you, it was a rain day, if I remember correctly. So nobody was there. But I knew the walls were there, so I came out and I was hitting on the wall, probably serving in the wall, things like that, volleying on the wall in the rain. And I think you sent out Roberto Calla. Yeah, he came out and he introduced himself and said, "Hey, when the tournament's over, why don't you come and practice with us?" I was like, "Great." I was the guy that drove around by myself, living out of the trunk of my car. I didn't have a coach or anything, so I thought, that sounds great. Yeah, so I attended your first offer practice, and I always say within a half an hour, you made me very mad. And it's not because you did anything. It's that you were saying things that to me made sense, complete sense, logical sense, but they're things that I had never heard before. So I was mad that I'd never heard that, because I'm like, I've struggled with these things for so long, and the fixes are quite easy. Why didn't anybody ever tell me to fix these things? And so that began the journey of me investigating the GreatBase.
No, I remember you were injured and they said, well, if you could just hit at least 45 minutes on the right side, being right-handed, and then we'll have you on film. We can break down your game, get someone essential strokes from 3 angles, film someone rallying, playing points. And then I said, well, then we'll start teaching you with your opposite hand.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'd actually already started trying to serve left-handed because I had an injury some years before that when I was trying to, I went on the tour twice to try to get through, and I hurt my shoulder the first time. And I tried to serve lefty and keep playing so I could give my right shoulder time to heal. It actually was decent, but it wasn't going to do any good trying to play pro opponents. So when you suggested left hand, I thought, oh, this is great. I've already started the serve a little bit, and so we just started doing everything left-handed. And now I can do both sides, every shot.
No, you play tennis so well with your opposite hand. I would say you play 5-5 tennis with your left hand.
Okay.
And I can remember teenage boys playing you and they'd be so upset, their ego. I'm losing this guy. He's playing with his opposite hand. I go, but he's the same guy. He's athletic. He's at the net. He's calm. He's cool. He's collected. He's the same guy. He's just hitting the ball left-handed. But their ego would be shattered. So after making the changes, tell us about going back to play. You were no young kid. You were 27, right?
Yeah, 27. And then by the time I was 28, I was at a club teaching. So I really didn't have time to apply and make those changes. But since I was going to teach this way, since I was passionate about not having my students run into the same obstacles that I did by not knowing what to change, I was already thinking that way. It's in my mind. I'm still working on my lefty just because I found it to be quite fun. And so I was applying it there. And over the course of, I'd say, from 28 till about 32, 33, it was here. It wasn't necessarily that I did it there, but it was in my mind. And I just always kept it in mind as I taught. And so I started playing some doubles at another club that I went to. They had an open league in Chicago. It's like kind of like Alta in Atlanta.
I remember that among the teaching pros, you could play right-handed or left-handed.
Yeah. And so it was a really high-level league, and we played doubles. And so I'd started doing that some, and I was like, okay, well, these skill sets are starting to to make a difference. And after a couple years of that, I decided, all right, let me see what it feels like in singles. It had been a long time since I played singles, and it was kind of like a switch went off. So I went and played my first tournament in singles. It was a money tournament in Chicago. I think it was at the East Bank. So I went to play there, and I had switched to one-hand backhand because I finally knew how to do that. And so I played one-hand backhand for the first time and ended up winning that tournament. But the thing I remember most distinctly is playing that first match in singles after all these years of changing my strokes mentally. I had to pause because something was different. And not just the strokes. And I was trying to figure it out. And I finally figured out it's that I was able to think 2 and 3 shots ahead. And I'd never done that. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, now strategy is becoming easy because I can see what's going to take place in the point. And the key factor for allowing me to do that was that I wasn't worried about every shot I hit. I realized that until GreatBase, every shot I hit I had to focus on because you never know if you're going to make it. Well, my technique had become so refined that I knew I was going to make it. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't a concern. I knew when I went to hit a ball, I knew it was going to go over there, so I can go ahead and think about what I was going to do next and next. And so it's like the court just illuminated. I was like, wow, I thought I always knew strategy. I knew nothing about strategy until that day. I was like, now I know what strategy really means.
No, that's interesting. Certainly, tactics, I was telling a group of children today, and just one parent was observing and said, no, if you think about it, initially in the formative years, you used tactics to also teach technique. The percentage line to the percentage post, which really comes from Jack Kramer's high school geometry teacher, the influence from Braden, the path of the racket to the path of the target. It should really be like, aha, light bulb moment. This makes so much sense. You want me to go from A to B, I'm going to connect the dots. Speaking of Jack Kramer and playing with your opposite hand, Ted Schroeder grew up same time, California kid, won Wimbledon. I worked with his son, Rick. We both taught for Vic Braden, and Rick was taught how to play by Vic Braden. And he only played tennis, through an early age, like 13, 14. Played a number of sports. Was an All-American in basketball, All-American in golf, 2 sports. And he could play equally. He's, I would say, a 5-5 player, right-handed. And maybe with the opposite hand, he was a 5-0 player. But if you start early, but it also, too, is that it's a great way to teach someone. I remember Dennis Vandermeer, Rafael Fontemora, was a coach out in Arizona. He's from Spain. He was with Dennis Vandermeer. And Dennis sent young Rafael to me. And Rafael, to this day, anybody who works with big time energy, big time energy, and arguing. They're 18, 19 years old. They say, oh, no, just play with your opposite hand. And then it's like, because if someone has like a really strong continental grip on a volley and they're, chopping down, angle the racket face, angle the racket path, and then you say, okay, now try to do it with your opposite hand. It's also a great way to make kids stop and think. We have kids do static balance, drop hitting, and just yell out, okay, everyone. It's pretty impressive, too. Everyone's do now with your left hand, visiting parents here for the first day. A forehand's a forehand. And I do think that older players, they shouldn't do it with attitude, but when older players are playing younger players, I've done that so many times. Not as much as we used to, but we have kids play with their opposite hand. I know you spent time with my son Connor. Connor tactically was better with his left hand because I'm not making errors off my ground strokes. First chance I get to the net, I'm getting my nose over the net. I remember a young kid Connor was probably 18 and young kid was number 1 Canada in the 12s. And, Connor was a big win. He beat the 12 and under national champion in Canada, the number 1. playing with his opposite hand. But it's just like, I am coming to the net. So how many years after you made the changes, 27, did you go from playing to teaching, coaching?
I was 28 when I started coaching. So it was pretty soon after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about teaching and coaching.
It was, I'd coached a little before playing, or in between my 2 stints of playing on the tour. I had coached at a Charlotte Tennis Academy, Bill Schilling's. And so I had some experience in coaching. And but after meeting you, my coaching was definitely going to change. It was going to be different. And so it took a little while for me to get my groove, my style of how I was going to teach something that, is new to people, to a lot of coaches. But I ended up at some really good places where we had good teams. We trusted each other, and so they were open. And so, but it was still, much of the industry would still, you'd still find people who'd push back. But overall, I've had great experience with trying to incorporate new vision and new directions. And just if you get people who care about tennis and who trust you as a person, and you can trust each other, you ask questions about tennis, we'll come up to the right answers if you give enough time. You dialogue, you brainstorm, and I've done this. I've done workshops where I wasn't wanting to approach it as I'm in charge, I'm teaching. I just wanted to facilitate the dialogue. And so I would bring a question, but I knew where the answer would end up, because you have smart people caring about tennis, analyzing it, and they came up with the same things that we teach, but it took dialogue. It took disagreeing with one another and bending and molding a little bit, but it's very interesting, but it's been a neat path.
Oh, that's great input. No, so you have over 20 years now of diversified experiences. And I started to think about many connections that we have. At one point, you were sending juniors to me. They had to come and work with me first before they could work with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember being in Chicago, College Park, beautiful place.
Yeah.
A lot of people love tennis. It was during the recession. And you could tell tennis was down a little bit. The adults, nice enough that they were still supporting their children's tennis, but they backed off a little bit on their own. Mm-hmm. Financial constraints. But I think when I think of Chicago, I certainly think of many things, but one thought is I work for Tennis Corporation of America, pretty much now known as Midtown. And in Chicago, I think this was true at College Park, is many of the pros would have a Memorial Day to Labor Day outdoor club that they ran. So they had their own group of students. And then people that own indoor facilities, they love to welcome those pros with open arms, because they would bring their students in.
Yeah.
And they would pay membership for the indoor season and then pay court fees. So it was a win-win. But the thing that was difficult, I remember you being in that situation, you were the director, is to try to get everybody on the same page. Now, Midtown Tennis Corporation of America, I was based in Rochester, a place that one time had 16 indoor courts, 25 pros. The tennis director, which I was, the Rochester Memorial Day to Labor Day clubs were controlled by Tennis Corporation of America. So the pros would leave, and they were under the same umbrella, basically. So they weren't independent contractors. They worked for, it was just, I know Chicago is a much, much bigger city, and so there's more outdoor clubs. But that was one thing that was a challenge. I remember when you were at College Park, because everybody had their own students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is tough to have people get united. Tell us about most recently, you were with TennisBloc. Mm-hmm. Jackson Bowen, great guy, great mind.
Yeah.
I've never met his partner. You tell us about both of them.
Yeah, Lee Cancello, he's the CEO, and Jackson Bowen is the COO. And then there's Walt, I think he's the assistant COO. But these guys, they've been getting TennisBloc off the ground starting 15 years ago, and it worked. It moved slowly, but the last 5 years they've really picked up. They now have, I think we're working with about 120 facilities all over North and South Carolina. I still say we, now it's them, but and they have about 120 coaches, and that changes. So it's a big operation, and it requires a lot of supervision and management, a lot of technology, a lot of management systems, databases and things like that. So it was quite a challenge. I'm used to being on the court and, building relationships and, talking and, getting to know the membership. But with this kind of organization, it was a lot of business. And so one of the things that I was very, very grateful to be able to bring to TennisBloc was a passion for coaching coaches. I've had that passion ever since I started because I knew that I wanted other coaches to learn what I learned the hard way. And so we found an avenue whereby I could manage a big portion of the operations and the coaches themselves and their schedules the way I saw it, in exchange for being able to coach those coaches. So we created a 3-tier certification pathway in-house, and we have lots of coaches coming through. So when I say 120 coaches, I don't mean it's the same 120. We have about 70 to 80 that kind of are the same, and then the rest are kind of rotating in and out. So a lot of coaches, and so it's a great platform to touch lives and to share. And we had a lot of interest. We had a lot of coaches that have been going to your website, going through the courses. That's the first tier, and so we had a pretty robust developmental pathway, professional development for the coaches. And that was even though that was a small portion of my job, that was the passion behind it. And as a result, I learned a whole lot about business, a whole lot about how to run a business.
No, that will always serve you well. Let me ask you, with TennisBloc, primarily in the Carolinas?
Yeah, North and South Carolina exclusively.
Because at one time they put a stop on growth because it was growing so fast.
Yes, that was right before I came in. They were growing so fast, they knew they had to stop and focus on quality, keep what they had, and that's when they brought me in. They knew that my focus would be quality. I don't know that I had the sales skills that the previous guy had to expand it, but they knew I could, or they felt that I could take care of the coaches, reduce the turnover there, and that's been great. So that we have a lot more coaches that are sticking around for long term because they have some long term visions now.
No, I'm very grateful to be connected to TennisBloc. I've done several workshops for them. Jackson, he was a very quick study as far as when the information was presented to him.
Yeah.
I think when people, just even a young kid, if they get the comparative experience, if they can, the Bradenism we use all the time, the dimensions of the court and physical laws dictate stroke production, no coach's opinion or any unique theory. So we went through that just the other day with a visiting coach. Okay, we're all going to go through the court. Let's go through the realities of the court. Let's talk about the racket parts. Let's talk about the grip in just 12 chapters. Then you go to body balance. You go to checkpoints. You go to tracing the swing against a wall, a stationary ball off a cone, a self-fed ball. And then when you get into how partners toss the ball, you got to go really slow. So then eventually you get to a toss ball. There's a lot of application before you get into a rallied ball. And that another Braden expression that certainly is from even years obviously before Vic, it's generational. There's no substitute for good beginning. But you were off the court pretty much with TennisBloc.
Yes, off the court.
Which was very good. As you said, you learned all sorts of skills.
I did. Yeah.
I always break it down. I consider myself a ball hopper guy. Are you a ball hopper pro or are you a briefcase pro? And you have to do both. But I think a lot of older coaches, Dave Anderson mentions that all the time, is that he doesn't really appreciate coaches want to get off the court. They want to get away from the game. Get in the air conditioning, sit down and just farm out the work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of older coaches, they get really removed from the game that way.
Yeah.
And like anything, with skills, if you don't use them, you lose them. And I do think a lot of coaches, I picked this up from Julian Krinsky. This is how you teach advanced players. It's so funny. You're a coach of advanced players. All you do is you hug your racket and lean back. And that's how you coach an advanced player. You just hug your racket and watch him go at it. But let's go through the news. Let's go through the big announcement. This is fantastic news for a lot of people. I'm so happy to make an understatement that you're the new director of the Wintergreen Racquet Sports Department. Let's do a little commercial for Wintergreen. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of Wintergreen?
Beauty. Yeah, I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina.
Yeah.
These same mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I have a love for the Blue Ridge Mountains. I've spent a lot of my life going to them. I work in the city, but I go to the mountains. I'm driving somewhere, I'll take the mountain path. It's something I've always chased is the beauty of the mountains and just God's creation in general. I just like to get settled there, get the refueling I need to get back to the grind. Being able to work in that atmosphere, I think that's a pretty good combination.
Everything is circumstantial, but again, so pleased that it's worked out for you. Wintergreen, people ask me, are you committed to Wintergreen? I said, well, I did make $1 million investment with the property I bought. And it did cost almost $100,000 to get set up here, with equipment we brought up and this and we got, 7 TVs, every room, the tennis house has 2 classrooms, and here we've got 2 setups for a classroom. But I would say that Wintergreen, first of all, I'd never heard of Wintergreen. I have to go through the story on how I ended up here, but it is a postcard.
Yeah.
It is a screensaver, especially, if you're here in the summertime, the 4 seasons, but just from a tennis standpoint. One, you feel like you're teaching tennis in the forest. In the summertime, it's not hot. And the volume of tennis, we have 16 clay courts. 4 at the bottom of the mountain, but overall 16 clay courts. I have 3 indoor. There's 8 pickleball courts. But you really, people come in here, say from Houston. That has to be right up there as far as heat and humidity, or Miami. And it's just so refreshing. Yeah. So, the courts should be open by May 1st, and you can really go, I'd say, to October 15th. Okay. You should never get into the doom and gloom. But if I were to say one negative is the fall season up here is too short. It just turns into a rainbow, the foliage, all the colors. But how I ended up here was Warren Pretorius. He's very close with Andy Fitzell. I know Warren really well as well, but I'm working with Andy side by side in Florida. And Warren, his wife, walked their dog with a gentleman by the name of Vern Greco, who's the CEO of Wintergreen. This is Park City. These are ski people up here.
Yeah.
They have 7 resorts. So Mr. Greco and his wife would be walking their dog. So the 2 wives, Warren Pretorius called us up, and we got online and looked at it. But it was a timing where Andy with his wife, they were on their way back to Germany. Andy's wife's parents were a little bit older, and I was scheduled to come here just for the summer. But then I'd spent a little bit of time in the hospital and said, that could be a good place to just hang my hat. Steve Campbell, who's here, he went to Tennis Tech, the program we have for tennis teachers. Steve was here with his wife, Colleen. But that expression, they're both back in Colorado and very, very happy with what they're doing. But for them, it wasn't the right fit. So the first winter, I stayed here the whole time. I tell people, if you work a place, you should be there 1 year to figure it out. You shouldn't even have a vote. You shouldn't have an opinion until the first year's over. So I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't do that. But so the second year, I didn't really plan on being here for the winter, but they were looking for a director. There's some quality people that applied. I think of Jim Richards from England, but it has to work out for the spouse, has to work out for the kids. It is a different place. There's not a traffic light. So if you're looking for the church, or you're looking for the school, or you're looking for the shopping center, it's 45 minutes away, basically, maybe 30 to 45. One of the coaches and I are going to talk about programming. I know you and I have talked about that. So why don't you just expound upon what you'd like to see take place here? I know what I'd like to see take place, but why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I'll give a big picture, a lot of details. Like you said, it might take me a year to figure out the details of how to make it work, but I've experienced in the industry, if there's a spectrum, and let's say GreatBase and immersion is on one side, and then you have the typical, country club, racket club version of drills and programs. I've tried to blend the two. Obviously, you can't force one end to the other end too quickly. And I'd say I've done a pretty good job of bringing things towards the middle and then having small sections of programs that would go towards the other end of the spectrum where I can get more immersed with certain students and with certain groups. I think here, having it embedded here already, having that seed here, I think we can integrate both sides of that spectrum very fluidly. Now, maybe certain programs, maybe certain people to certain degrees, but that integration to me is exciting because it seems like a perfect fit for any program to be able to have the entire spectrum to be able to be offered and to just have different degrees to which the different dynamics work together to make a good experience for everyone. And to satisfy my passion, I still get to bring, tennis truth to the table. And so I think for me, it's great. And I think it's going to work out. It's worked out in other places that I've been, not being able to integrate this fully. I think this is the perfect place for a full and proper integration.
The expression "put it on the map." During the time where they're looking for Wintergreen management, and I've learned so much from Jay Gamble. He's now retired, and now Zach Marlowe, the current general manager. He's been here almost 10 years. It was enduring. A lot of interviews, a lot of meetings, but the expression to put it on the map. And I've heard both of them say that Wintergreen has been ranked in the top in years gone by, top 50 resorts in the world, tennis resorts. But sometimes that was tied in, or many times that's tied in with how much money you're spending on advertising. Is that ranking put out by Tennis Magazine? And did you buy ads with Tennis Magazines? But in addition to the tennis scene, there's 8 pickleball courts. It's a beautiful setting. And I think one thing is a challenge now, you're the director of Racquet Sports. You and I have talked about it, the philosophy. Those two sports need to be united. They're not that different. We'll go to the Sam Querrey quote over and over again. If you know tennis, 90% what you need to know in pickleball. There's a lot of nuances, and you have to honor the people that really know the ins and outs of strategy, perhaps. But I heard Sam also say, a very popular podcast, Nothing Major. Well, the people that are really good at pickleball are former tennis players that have just practiced 8 hours a day. And he goes, I don't practice pickleball 8 hours a day. He just shows up and plays. Prevention of injury. The people that are doing the best with pickleball are the orthopedic surgeons. The ready position is the ready position. There's not a serve in pickleball, but there's an overhead. And, one of our students, if we went through it and went through some old videos, no doubt that you were training with Rachel Robacher. She would have been a younger kid. Played at South Carolina, and by circumstance fell into pickleball, and she's one of the top 10 players in the world. So she was on our podcast, and she said, "Thanks for teaching me an Eastern grip." People that have Western grips and what have you, they're having the same problems in pickleball that they're having in tennis. With for me, we certainly have to honor the membership. Mm-hmm. Members take priority. But then to interface, to have hotel guests, and then even visiting coaches, visiting players. It is discouraging that I've been here for 3 summers and we haven't had any tournaments. And the UTR, Wintergreen has paid the fee to the UTR for two years now, I think. I think it's 2 years, and there hasn't been a UTR event. But we have to connect the heartbeat of the tennis centers, the front desk, and we have to. And it's good to have. I've known you for over 20 years, so you can hit the ground running with getting the staff. And I think it's great that you're starting. I mean, there are 3 indoor courts, so it's not like there is no winter season. You have 3 indoor courts, but so to make the business work year round. But now you have the last quarter of this year. Everything, you really should have everything ironed out. Yeah, the expression, have it be on the map. And not just to come up here for tennis instruction. And you have to be basic first, but then you can be a little bit creative. What else on, any thoughts on Wintergreen? How about from a personal standpoint, you, your wife, kids coming up here?
Yeah, you talked about commitment. You came up here and invested, and it's obvious you earned the title of committed. And so for me, yeah, this is a big move for my family and I. We needed to stay in North Carolina for a handful of reasons, but this has proven to be a good enough opportunity that we've stretched our limits a little bit, and we're coming up here, and my wife and kids, they're coming up here sight unseen. So they're trusting me big time. So we are committing. This is a place I want to raise our kids. This is wonderful.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned Chuck Kriese. I wrote down a Chuck Kriese quote. He's a man of many quotes. This is obviously not from Chuck, but he uses this. Some mind vitamins are so good that you just know they were around a long, long time before Chuck and I were walking around. Elder statesman in tennis, referring to tennis players, juniors, college players. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Why don't you give us a Chuck Kriese story? Then we'll go to Lawson Duncan for a story.
Oh, gee. Okay.
And I know you do a Lawson Duncan impression, but what's one story comes to your mind with Chuck Kriese?
There's so many. To pick one, let's see.
Pain. Pain. Yeah, just the physical. Mark Dixon's father Mark Dixon got to be 32 in the world, and like Lawson Duncan, like yourself, played for Chuck, and Mark Dixon's dad used to come out and watch us teach tennis, just loved it. In fact, he'd hit the backboard, watch us teach tennis, hit the backboard, watch us teach tennis. But he had his son in the swimming pool. He said, well, maybe his knees weren't so bad, but a little bit of a white lie, a little fib. Coach, my son has to go to the swimming pool because it's like cross country 101. I mean, I'm sure it's gotten better. He's at the Citadel now, and one of our students not too long ago became his captain. Didn't make the lineup as a freshman, worked his way up. But what's a Chuck Kriese story comes to your mind?
Well, one of my favorite ones is not one I was a part of, but they were going out to L.A., that 6-lane highway, that really big area of L.A., and they were not behaving themselves in the van as Chuck expected. They were not meeting the standard of pre-match behavior, or maybe it was post-match. Yeah, maybe it was post-match behavior. So he pulled off on the side of the ginormous highway, and he told everybody to get out and to start walking. And he then drove off, and he ended up, I don't know how far down, but pulling off on the side of the road somewhere, putting out a chair, reading a newspaper until they got to him. However many hours later they got to him.
Chuck Kriese. Chuck Kriese and Carlos Goffey. Carlos Goffey wrote the book Tournament Tough. He worked for Mr. Hobman. He was a young coach working with the McEnroes, Brazilian. His son's doing really well at University of South Carolina. People can go back, and we had both of them on our podcast, Carlos Goffey, and Chuck's been on a couple of times. Tell us who Lawson Duncan is.
Yeah, so Lawson Duncan is one of my favorite people. He has every reason to be arrogant, but he's one of the most humble guys. He's a stallion of a man, meaning just strong naturally in every way, athletic. I've played tennis with a lot of people. Ryan Rowe from University of Illinois, who David
monster guy.
Yeah, David Anderson said he hits his forehand every bit as hard as Rafael Nadal's. So I played against Ryan Rowe in singles and in doubles. So I know what that big forehand looks like. They didn't compare even a tiny bit to Lawson Duncan's forehand. It would literally push me back, like somebody came up to me and just pushed me every time I hit the ball. That's his tennis. But as far as a man is concerned, he's one of the most humble guys, very accomplished. You pay him a compliment. He's so humble, it's hard for him to take. So I'll be like, well, I don't know about that. He just tries to brush it off. Just his training regiments. I thought I could work hard. That's why I thought I was going to be the best, because I worked the hardest. Then I met, Lawson, or trained with Lawson. I already knew him, but trained with Lawson.
He's a little bit older than you.
10 years. Yep. He was making a
North Carolina boy, mountain boy.
Yep. Same mountains, North Carolina. That's right. And he was making a comeback onto the tour after an injury. I was trying to make it on the tour. So I was in town. We ended up training together for about 6 months. And he shared with me just about every Yvonne Lindell training session that they would go through. And I mean, mountain biking and biking on the road and running and all kinds. I mean, he could work hard. And that was a lot of fun.
I met Lawson Duncan. It was 1985. Very easy to remember. Boris Becker just won Wimbledon. I was teaching tennis in Germany. And Robbie Seguso was playing doubles. I've known Robbie Seguso since he was 10, and his brother Roger was there, and they found out I was teaching tennis in Germany. So through Roger, next thing I know is I'm in the hotel, I'm with a team, and there's a lot of stories with that. But I remember saying to Robbie, I said, Lawson Duncan is pretty cocky, pretty aloof, huh? And he started laughing. He says, he is the nicest guy. He's not conceited at all. He's just 100% good, but he's so quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was just being a little too cool for school and wasn't talking to people. I was doing a workshop for you in Asheville where you both grew up, were close to it. And I remember someone come up and it was raining. And I said, hey, Lawson, tell us about working out with Lendl and other things. And it was a fun session, you know. He spoke and spoke and spoke. And someone said afterwards, I had never heard him talk so long. But I can remember the Lendl story. Actually, Pete Sampras, he's a young guy, was invited to work with Lendl. And that's a story of legend where Sampras would say, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have made it to where I was because he really learned to work. Mm. You know, ride the bike 20 miles before breakfast. And Lawson said that he was playing 2 5-set matches, one in the morning, one in the evening, of course. And what Lendl was doing is being shrewd is he was just playing to his forehand. Mm-hmm. If I can beat Lawson Duncan's forehand, I'm good. I'm doing okay. Tell us the story about the Jeep and the wolf.
Okay, yeah. So I was practicing with him one day, and like you said, he wasn't talking much. We were hitting balls. That's about it. We were training. That's about it. And one day, we walk up to the net post to get a drink, whatever, and he says, "So Ryan, you ever seen Timberwolf?" And I thought to myself, he means like a John Deere tractor or something. Maybe it's just something I'm not familiar with. And so, you know, because I know he's a mountain man, maybe he had some landscaping machinery. I don't know. But he says to me, I was like, no, I don't think so. He goes, well, why don't you come to my house? I'll show you. And so we're going to his house. And so I'm assuming I'm going to see a cool tractor or something. And we pull up the driveway. And first thing I notice is his backyard has fencing, like 8-10 feet tall. Just chain link fencing, just really tall. I'm like, that's odd. But anyway, so we start walking towards that fence, and he's getting ready to open the door to the fence. And again, this is just perpetuating my thought that he's going to show me something that mows the lawn. So he opens the door, and this Timberwolf, I mean, this thing stood like 4.5 feet high, and it ran around the corner. And I'd never seen a dog that big, and it wasn't a dog, it was a Timberwolf, and he runs over to me, and the Timberwolf jumps up, excited to see me. I didn't know his excitement at the time, but he then puts his paws on my shoulders, like this, and looks at me. And Lawson says, "Down, boy." And that Timberwolf was just like, "Sorry, Dad." Yeah, but he's a mountain man in every way. So they had found his dad, who rode a motorcycle everywhere. He had found a abandoned cub in the woods years ago, and he raised it as his own Timberwolf.
The story of the Jeep, he drove off the road, and he said no problem. He kind of just put his shoulder into the Jeep and lifted it back on the road. His
pickup truck, yeah. And so he gets in the ditch, and he pushes that truck up to where the tires will get on, and he ended up hurting his shoulder doing that. He's strong enough to do it, but he was human, so he hurt his shoulder a little bit. And his solution was, his Timberwolf had a shock collar that was pretty strong. Like, it's not the kind of shock collar you'd put on a golden retriever. It was a strong electric shock collar. So he thought he would create a stim, therapy. He put a wet towel on his shoulder, takes that shock collar, and starts shocking his shoulder. Don't really know what more to say about that, but that's interesting.
I know he based himself in Europe. I think it was the red clay. I don't know if it was a fear of flying, but a lot of times players in the past would do that. And they could make quite a bit of money, make it playing Bundesliga and such. But so he was in Europe. But he only, I believe, country kid, goes to Clemson and gets the NCAA finals. But he had some holes in his game too, right? If someone, it's just one of those things, if somebody got a hold of him, and helped him with the other parts of his game. To me, watching him play, it was like he had the big kick serve and then a monster of a forehand.
Mm-hmm.
But what about some other parts of his game?
Well, so his forehand was a tremendous amount of spin and power mixed.
Yeah.
I was doing a drill with some kids one time. He helped me with a program I was running out in Black Mountain, and just goofing around, he decided to take a short ball that I fed and just kind of relaxed. He's just stepped up to it, maybe, transition zone in between the baseline and the service line, and he just takes it shoulder level and just smacks it about as hard as I could have hit an overhead at my hardest. And I just didn't expect it. That ball just rocketed by me. I'm like, how does he even come up with that kind of power? So on the forehand side, he could just do superhuman things. His backhand was good. It wasn't special, but it was good. And one-hand backhand, and he used his strength. That's why he hurt his arm. But he could use that to get the ball high and deep. He had the kick serve, but other than on red clay, that didn't really give him the advantage. He didn't like being at the net, so he basically kicked a serve in and then used his speed and strength to get as many forehands as he could hit. And then that's about what he lived off of. So he got to top 30 in the world with one shot. That's pretty impressive. But if he just had the others.
Yeah. Well, let's conclude with this. I've been in tennis obviously a half a century, a little more than that, a long time. So fortunate that we have a large alumni and associates, people we've worked with. We need to make connections. Why don't I try this? I'll go first with programming, and then you go give us a program. What are some bullet points? So we'll turn it into a commercial for Wintergreen.
Okay.
You're here. I would really love to see this place become a hub. So far it might be a little bit more, but we've had people from 28 states and 18 countries. We've had a lot of people come a long ways. I'll start. I'll go. I think one thing is parents need to come to learn the pathway. Parents need to bring their child, and they need to study, and they need to know how to practice with their child. The attitude of the household, the lifestyle. Okay, what do you do in your garage? What do you do in your basement? Have you set up mirrors? We tell people if you're following our program to the nth degree, where do you have the string hanging from the ceiling? Comes down to your highest point, your outstretched arm and racket. Because with our nonprofit, we're trying to make tennis more accessible, more affordable, and more truthful. But that would be one key, that parents should come and they should bring a clipboard, and they can also be on court. They could be a passive observer, or they could be active. And I think coaching in many ways is way overrated. It's too expensive. And I tell parents all the time, I do think parents have a bad image of too many parents are over-involved and they're climbing the fence and they're stepping out of their lane. They don't really know tennis teaching or tennis coaching, especially the teaching side. But that would be one, I think. Parents of young children, and it's not that complicated. It's not that complicated to really understand core information and know how to go about tennis the right way. Most kids, they should be playing a number of sports when they're really young. The one thing I've been told by Andy Fitzell many times is, don't let anybody pigeonhole the GreatBase, because it's for every level of the game. Matt Clore, who's from your neck of the woods, who you know so well, spent a lot of time with. He told me he was having a conversation with, he works with the USTA, and basically saying, there's so many similarities to what you teach a 5-year-old or what you teach a ATP or WTA player. But that would be one. The business side of it, I'm not really a businessman per se, but how's it go? Avenues for revenue. If it was just the octopus and we had 8 tentacles, that would be one pathway for GreatBase. I should say, my mistake, GreatBase is a curriculum. For Wintergreen, and that needs to be something that Wintergreen is Wintergreen. This is a beautiful place, and GreatBase is just a curriculum. What's an idea you have?
I think, back to what I was speaking of on, the differences between, full immersion GreatBase and country club tennis, at its extremes, to integrate some of the same mind vitamins, the same beneficial progressive steps to getting better. Every player can improve. That's a philosophy I have, and I think that's very true. And so that's young kids to professionals to older individuals. Every player can improve. So one thing I like to do is convince people of that. There's a lot of people who don't think they can improve. Now they say they want to, but a lot of times when you really get down to it, they don't really believe that they can do it. I think it's just kind of programmed in that, you play a sport, you obviously are going to dress it as if you can improve, but then they don't necessarily live that out. So one of the things I like to encourage people that they can improve, make it tangible, make it logical, but you also have to make it fun, especially for the other side of that spectrum. If individuals are used to dynamic drills, they're used to enjoying it, they're used to the social aspect with their teammates, with a ladies doubles team or USTA team and whatever it may be, they're going to need to have fun because they're doing tennis because they're already having fun doing it. They enjoy the game. So it has to start out fun. So the place where I feel like you can really break in and start making headway with their developmental path is through doubles. Doubles is very common in all areas of country club and racket club tennis for all levels, except juniors, I'd say for the most part. Juniors usually need help getting into doubles, but adults are usually pretty geared towards doubles in general. Now, doubles is great for running dynamic drills, but also in doubles, you can learn a lot about how to win at doubles. I personally don't feel that a lot of people play what I would call smart doubles. And when it comes to doubles, you have two people covering one court. There's no open courts. There's no hit better shots, hit winners, and you'll be better. So to be able to beat a better player, to be able to beat a better team, you have to improve. And in doubles, you can learn those concepts in a very fun way. And you get people learning doubles, playing doubles, becoming experts in doubles, knowing the smart ways to play, the statistics-supported ways to play, and enjoying it. Well, then those are, as you call it, mind vitamins that make them healthier. They have good results, and then they typically, are more open to more instruction, and then you can still bring more. So for me, the doubles is a way to really make tennis enjoyable and productive, and it's a good bridge into more of what we're trying to bring from GreatBase standpoint. For juniors, I think doubles is extremely opportunistic as well. You have a lot of juniors who ignore doubles, and I think that's just the norm for the most part. I think it's partly because they just haven't had success in it and found it to be so fun. But if we teach juniors doubles, we get them to be exceptional at doubles, to really know the game of doubles and have the skill sets necessary. Doubles can get them to levels that their singles may not get them to. If you have a good singles player who can also play doubles, let's say they're equal in their knowledge of doubles and singles, their doubles will take them further naturally because there's fewer opposition. There's fewer opponents who really know how to play doubles. So I think for kids with GreatBase, that's another thing that we can do a lot of to get them proficient in some areas. Now, the good thing about doubles is that it'll make you a better singles player. Singles won't make you a better doubles player. So it seems to me to be a win-win across the board. So I think a lot of programming can really use doubles as a base.
Obviously, I think highly of you. I had you travel some with my son, Connor. And I know it would have worked better if we all three could have met. Didn't work out where the three of us met. And then Connor coming out of college, he was a little bit thrown off by the fact that he wanted to play doubles with him. And I said, he can. I said, he can. With
maybe I shouldn't have offered that. But
yeah, so he was a little thrown off by that. But so there are other things. But, there is an adjustment period when kids come out of college where a lot of testosterone, a lot of hype. Big difference between college tennis and trying to play pro tennis. Even if you're not playing doubles as a touring pro, you should still work on double skills. Yeah. Entry-level adults. What Braden used to say, and this would be mostly for the women, but there was a time where men were buying tennis outfits. Now the pro shop is really not a pro shop. It is here because it's a resort, it's a beautiful place. But typically it's a pro shop, but there's no apparel in the pro shop. You go from one tennis facility to the next. But Vic used to say, yeah, you go to the groceries, you buy the tennis clothes. You buy the tennis clothes, and then you just wear them to the grocery store. But now the way pickleball is you could buy it because you could play pickleball. So the attractive ladies in the yoga pants, I'm sorry, we don't want to get off track with our G rating here, but the younger people are playing pickleball as well. But it's very social, and pickleball and tennis need to be united. Right away, you can have a pickleball and a tennis function, and you're teaching. This is the ready position. You just take the theme of prevention of injury, using your large body parts. There's this thing called footwork. And, I think a lot of people are playing pickleball, and you might as well just give them a fly swatter, the way they're playing. And there's such a hustle with people becoming pickleball experts. It reminds me of tennis in the 70s. Now, when I was in tennis, I instantly overnight was offered jobs in tennis. But I worked as a volunteer for 3 years just because, coming from ice hockey and older brothers, there's no way I was going to start. I just started learning to play 2 weeks ago, and now I'm giving lessons. I mean, that's the way it was in tennis in the 70s. I think it's very much that way now in pickleball. Granted, there's people that are really making a study of it. I don't want to totally underplay that. But entry-level adults, and package it where you combine tennis and pickleball, and you certainly need to learn how to practice. You don't want to just play pickleball, because if you play pickleball, you won't be able to play tennis. You have to approach to learn it both. And this facility has it. Okay, your turn. Another nugget. What else do you have that would be a good program to get people up here?
Well, I think we need some exercise-based programs. It's been called cardio tennis in the past, aerobics. I think that attracts a pretty good segment of the population, especially for us from the communities a little further away. We're a destination site. We have guests who come for the skiing, and a lot of those guests are skiing because they're athletes. And I think a good thing for Wintergreen to have is a pretty integrated exercise classes, or at least a series of classes that they can drop in on doing other sports. And so I think that it would appeal to a lot of a potential, base of guests that could, that could participate.
Ivano Surets was here for a long time. We came up and we were kind of a 2-man band, and it's unfortunate to say, I've been here for as long as I have and don't know the hiking trails and really don't know. I mean, we're a mile from the Appalachian Trail, but play tennis in the morning and hike in the afternoon, and, to bring fitness into it. I think also the way tournaments have changed. The USTA used to be like Bell Telephone. It was monopoly. And so now there's other ways to play tournaments, and it's changing all the time. I know Patrick Mortigolo and Patrick, if I say it correctly, Monigulu and Rafa Nadal, they're trying to have their own circuits. Or maybe, they are. Mm-hmm. A circuit of clinics and circuit of tournaments, and it has an angle to it. I don't want to be cynical, but if you win the tournament, let's say a Nadal tournament in the U.S., and you win 1 week. You win 1 week in Europe. Well, people aren't going to go for 1 week. So it's, there's some marketing to it. But just like in the futures, you could make it boutique style, but you could have, like, say, 8 weeks of UTR tournaments here. The PTT, the Alphabet Soup, has some money tournaments up here. But people could just stay for the summer. They could come here for 8 weeks. And you don't really have to chase USTA points. And the parents need to understand that. Granted, okay, I'd like to get into Kalamazoo or San Diego, play for the wild card for the U.S. Open, but college tennis right now it's so much based on the UTR, and there's now the WTN, other the Alphabet Soup, other acronyms coming into it, but they have like a college showcase in May. Get the facility open right away. Kids are still in school. You could have it be where, say it's 8 weeks there's qualifying in the middle of the week. Because the members, for the most part, they only need a certain amount of courts, and they only really need them in the morning. mean, there has to be some certainly special events, some tournaments, some calendar events for them. There already are. Like say, okay, what are you doing July 4th? What are you doing Labor Day? I guess it would start with Memorial Day. And you could certainly add some other things. But the members here to come out here in the evening and watch tennis, I mean, have exhibitions. I think making the connections and making it interfaced, having pros bring groups here. But everything that we've done, say we, as for the longest time, was just really just Yvonne and myself. We could go through it, and all we have to do is look at the names. And we've had administrators here. We've had club owners here. We've had college coaches here, high school coaches. Just keep going. You know, we've had obviously parents of children who've never played before, kids that we've known for years and years. You know, just to get it down to one piece of paper. Right now, I know people just have it on their phone, but what are we going to do for adults? What are you going to do for juniors? And then what do we have that's general? That expression, you know, there's nothing new under the sun. Yourself coming in as a director. 1 + 1 + 1. That's how it has to be. It's policy procedure. You take a lesson from Ryan, and then you have to take a lesson from one of the support pros. And then you have to go to a practice session run by one of the student assistants or an intern. So we're going to get you in the building 3 times a week. You know, it's just like a junior tennis player. Adults the same. If a junior player's, if they're only going to a tennis club once a week, fair enough. The parents are exposing them to the game, but they're not going to learn to play the game. Now, there's all sorts of things when it comes down to programming, but I would say that's the biggest thing. What comes to your mind when I say membership appreciation?
What comes to mind to me is our members. They invest. They're committed in their membership to this club, and we need to show them some love. We need to provide things to give them some activities, some fun things to do to create some community for them involving the racket sports division. And we should increase the quality of their lives, and that shouldn't cost more. They're already members. They're already paying for that membership, and so I think that's a privilege of ours to be able to serve them in that way. This needs to be something that gives back. And they're the first recipients of it. And, you know, back to helping people to grow, helping people to develop, even if they didn't know that they were interested in getting better. I think we should have programs for them and for everyone, actually, that's geared around learning to train. We teach people how to get better. You know, there's only so much we can do on the court with them. We're really educating them on how to improve. They take that and then they go and apply those things. But that's a whole nother area of helping people to get the most out of tennis is, well, what do you do when you're not on the court with the coach, when you're not on the court with a group in a clinic? You have to know how to get better, and there's some definite ways that are better than others. And so I like the idea of having a learning to train or how to practice kind of class that could be for everyone, and anybody could come to that. Doesn't matter level, age, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Actually, in tennis, one word that really solves a lot of problems is education. Tell me 3 ways to improve tennis. Education, education, education. On the other side of the indoor courts, nice building, but Wintergreen owns that, and it's leased out to a landscaping crew, but it is a lease. And Asian students want to play college tennis. So you were talking to one before we started the podcast. Now, she already is fluent in English, so it's a little bit different story. She's here to improve her tennis and already has a scholarship. But TOEFL, test on English fluency. We should have a TOEFL program. And the way it works out with a student visa is a student can come for 3 months. And most tennis players, they need to go through a technical phase of training. I think of one of our he was a student, longtime associate. He spent 7 years with Craig Tiley. He took a team from obscurity. They won the national championship at Illinois. That was a little bit before Ryan Rowe, who we mentioned. But I remember Tiley saying all college tennis players should take, a developmental year. And that's the way it used to be. I say that every other podcast I mentioned, Stan Smith and Arthur Ashe were freshmen who could not play. back in their day, freshmen couldn't play varsity. They both won Wimbledon. They both won the U.S. Open. But that would be one. It would be a TOEFL program. I think we could close by talking about interfacing, is it can all happen at the same time. You could have membership appreciation. Now, when I say I spent $100K on, I'm in the bunk bed business. So I bought these 2 places, 3 stories, 8 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms. I had never heard of a California king-size bed. So I don't need a California king-size bed. So a couple of friends helped, and this huge moving truck. So I'm a little old man, and I go in Charlottesville, North Carolina, and the lady at the counter of the store called Twice as Nice, the little old lady. So I'm the little man. I say to the little lady, I got a few things I want to donate. Oh, bring them in. I said, well, I got more than a few. She said, I'll just bring your car up to the curb. I said, well, I have a truck, a big truck. She was overwhelmed, but she called the general manager up, and the general manager said, we will take everything. So we had to take all the furniture, all but just a couple pieces, and we gave all of that away. And I was thinking, maybe I'm giving away some really nice antiques, but no time to slow down. Let's just give away this furniture. And then we had to stock the place, so it would be a bunk bed, bunkhouse for tennis players. People bring people. I don't like the fact that the UTR, for example, the parents will look up, the kids will look up and they'll go, Mom, I don't want to play. So for sake of simple math, so a boy looks it up on the internet and he's a 10, which is a decent tennis player. And they're kind of in limbo. They got a ways to go, but they're a decent tennis player as a 10. You can look at the draw sheets, open draw. So I'm not signing up, Mom. I'm the only 10. Everybody else in the tournament's a 9. They're not being clever and going, well, I'll play the tournament and I'll just serve and volley when I'm serving, and I'll chip and charge when I'm returning, and I'll go and I'll play and I'll be clever and I'll get match play in. But people aren't clever. People are highly intelligent, but I always tell people it takes 10 years to learn to be a player, 10 years to learn to be a coach, 10 years to learn to be a tennis parent. It's not easy. And, but, so to have energy, we have the network to do that. Let's get people up here, and one player will bring another player, and it's also on clay. One thing that's happening in tennis in the U.S., it's just amazing. And how many times can we hear that Andy Roddick was the last American man, 2003, I think it was, to win a major? So many Americans are going overseas and going to commercial academies. For the Americans listening, if you're taking your kid overseas, take them overseas to play tournaments. You don't need to take them overseas for training. Take them overseas to get them on the red clay and take a pair of running shoes. I'm not saying that they wouldn't benefit, but generally, you don't need to go to a commercial academy. People say, well, that's just a factory. You're just a number. And we have the connections to, like my son Connor. He's 15, 16. He played on a men's team in Germany. He didn't go to a commercial academy. Yeah, so it's great to have you here. I think we could do this. I think we could sign off, and the highest form of flattery is to imitate someone. Why do you, in your best, Lawson Duncan, say, I'd like to thank the listeners for listening. And, Wintergreen is a beautiful place. Something along those lines. Why don't you give us your Lawson Duncan close on this one?
Well, let me see what I can come up with. Fellas, thanks for being here. I enjoyed it. See you next time.
Yeah, it's great. Of course, it would be short and sweet. Really short and sweet. But no, I look forward to working with you and others at Wintergreen. It can become a great tennis place. It already is a great place. There's great people here. It's an amazing facility. We have a product, but we have to package that product. So many things, but a lot of people, the members included, people are here every day, and you really see the forest through the trees. So they look at what we're doing and go, oh, it's just for advanced kids. Mm. No, take a second look. There's a 4-year-old out there. There's a 74-year-old out there. We're working with everybody. And that's a big thing, peer teaching. And, there is no attitude. We use film. It's humbling. It's fact-based. And, like today, for example, a young gal is here. great athlete, work on her game. I played 4 years of college tennis. She wants to play pro tennis. And she's out there with a 7-year-old. And it works because fundamentals are fundamentals. But no, I look forward to you and your family being up here and loving it, loving the fact that you're giving it a go. Everybody, thanks for tuning in to another, I get in trouble for saying this, not so great tennis podcast. No, it's a great podcast. It's a great podcast. Anyway, Ryan, thanks a lot. Listeners, thanks. Phil and Yvonne, thanks for making this happen. Adios, amigos.